The Steam Deck has become one of the top choices for gaming handhelds and has developed a cult following behind it. But let's be realistic. In 2025, games are becoming increasingly demanding, and the competition for the Steam Deck is growing immensely as SteamOS will likely soon be available on more powerful handhelds. So with that said, does the Steam Deck have anything left to make it a viable option in today's market, given its most unique feature will be given to more powerful devices? That's what I aim to uncover in today's video. So let's start by going over the features of the Steam Deck that make the device unique compared to other handhelds, or more specifically, the Steam Deck OLED, which is the model that I currently own. The Steam Deck OLED has 2 trackpads, 2 symmetrical joysticks, 4 back buttons, and great speakers. But really, the star of the show out of all the Steam Deck's features are its 2 trackpads. This is the only handheld that really makes use of its trackpads. The haptic trackpads are a feature that Valve has been trying to implement for a decade now, starting with the Steam controller. But really where they shine is in navigation of the Steam Deck's user interface. I wouldn't recommend you use them in place of the joysticks, however, I have sometimes used the left one in place of the D-pad. Did you know if you move your finger in a circle on the left trackpad, it acts as a scroll wheel? Pretty useful in the Linux desktop mode. The 2 symmetrical joysticks also look uncomfortable at first, but trust me when I say this is the best form factor for joysticks on a handheld I have used yet. At least that's just my personal preference. As for the speakers, however, they are still some of the best in a handheld I have used. They are loud, detailed, and very clear. Have a listen for yourself. The Steam Deck shape is also very ergonomic and comfortable. It's my favorite shaped handheld besides the Legion Go S, but it's barely edged out by the S in my opinion. I hope they continue using this shape with future iterations of the Steam Deck. Speaking of comfort, today's sponsor, Into the AM, has some of the most comfortable, stylish, and most importantly, affordable clothing I have laid my eyes on. Into the AM is an online clothing brand that provides very high quality clothing for extremely competitive prices. Into the AM is built on the foundation of artists and creators who share a common vision. They see clothing as a canvas to express what drives them. Since 2012, they've developed premium apparel that elevates self-expression and provides unparalleled comfort for wherever your passion takes you. In fact, this entire outfit was done by Into the AM, and I can tell you from personal experience, the quality, comfort, and fit are fantastic. Into the AM provided me with this logoless blue t-shirt, athletic shorts, a gray Henley, and this sweet black hoodie for this video, all of which are high quality. So go down to the description and click the link for 10% off store-wide. Thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. Now, back to the review. So since the flagship Steam Deck model is the OLED model, we obviously have to discuss its OLED display. The Steam Deck OLED contains an 800p HDR 1000 nit peak brightness 90Hz display. Unfortunately, not with VRR. But because the display is OLED, you will see some of the inkiest blacks possible on this display. Couple that with HDR and you can see the colors really pop off the screen. It's really impressive. And also why I am excited to check out the Lenovo Legion Go 2 later this year. If you haven't seen my hands-on video with the Legion Go 2, check that video out here. However, the display is only 800p and is not capable of variable refresh rate, which is a real bummer. However, 800p really doesn't look that bad. The pixel density isn't terrible on this size of a display. And rarely will you find a game that you can play on here that would be playable at a higher resolution than 800p anyways, which leads me to the gaming section of our video. Now, let's talk about gaming and performance for the Steam Deck in 2025. The Steam Deck in 2025 is admittedly not the powerhouse it once was, but such a large variety of games are still playable on the deck that it might not even matter to you. I played a bit of Spider-Man 2 on the deck and it's running surprisingly well. I was caught a little off guard, to be honest. While it doesn't look the greatest, it is holding 30 FPS while swinging around New York. However, the frame rate will still dip below 30 FPS quite often in certain scenarios, like combat or just intense scenes in general. But the game itself, at least by my standard, is intact. I also played a bit of Monster Hunter Wilds, and I mean, it boots. At the lowest possible settings, however. But God, is this game ugly at these settings. And also barely ever touches 30 FPS. However, with FrameGen, I was able to hit above 30 FPS, but there are still issues that come with FrameGen like latency, visual issues, and whatnot. But without FrameGen, you will rarely ever see the game hit 30 FPS, unfortunately. But yeah, these are not the only games I have played on the Steam Deck recently. I just wanted to give some context to where my thoughts are coming from, especially considering these are both relatively new games for 2025 and, you know, kind of gives you an idea of how future games will run on the Steam Deck. In fact, a lot of games run better than you'd expect on the Steam Deck, but of course, there will be more and more games coming out that will struggle on the deck as time passes, so please be realistic with your expectations. As an indie game and emulator device, the Steam Deck is still an amazing device, and I am still shocked at how many new AAA games it can still run, and if you have the OLED model, HDR can be such a game changer in these games. But yeah, the gap between the Steam Deck OLED and its competition is widening, and it will become even more abundantly clear when the Z2 Extreme handhelds start hitting store shelves later this year in 2025. But last but not least, let's talk about SteamOS and its availability on other handhelds since it's such a huge topic right now. SteamOS is still my favorite operating system on a handheld. Personally, this is because I prefer my handheld to feel and operate like a console. I want to be able to turn on my device, see my game library, and jump into a game. This is because handhelds are mostly navigated with 2 joysticks, or in the case of the Steam Deck, trackpads. Also, a very underrated feature, SteamOS allows you to put your device to sleep and pick up where you left off in a game without running the battery. SteamOS also has Decky, which enables new levels of customization. As you can see here, I've made my UI a minimalist design, which looks fantastic to me. Really looks like a modern console UI now. SteamOS for the longest time is what made the Steam Deck one of my top choices for a gaming handheld, and it was something very unique to the Steam Deck that in my opinion made it so special, but now it's available on more powerful devices, so this changes a lot. On top of this, it seems as though Microsoft has been hard at work on their own SteamOS competitor to be revealed alongside their new Xbox handheld collaboration with ASUS. Very excited to see how that pans out because it will likely have less limitations than SteamOS, which by the way, there are some very distinct limitations of SteamOS you should be made aware of. Those being anti-cheat compatibility, Xbox Game Pass not being available natively, and some compatibility tweaks being required for Epic Games, Ubisoft, EA, and other launchers to be able to run on the Steam Deck, which leads to the last section of the video, my hopes for the Steam Deck 2. The Steam Deck 2 very obviously needs more power and a higher resolution display and a bigger battery, but I also really want to see some Hall effect joysticks built in. I know you can swap them in fairly easily, but still would be nice to not ever have to worry about doing that. Another thing they should really add is 2 USB-C ports. A lot of Windows handhelds have adopted this now, and I think it should be standard. But most importantly, since SteamOS is going to be available on most handhelds, I believe Valve will need to innovate a little bit here. They will be on equal footing with the rest of the market now, so I really hope that they come up with something new that helps them stand out from their competitors other than upgrading just power. Before we get to the final verdict, I just want to take one last moment to thank Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. I am truly humbled that such a great clothing brand and company loves my content enough to sponsor it. So please go check out the link in the description for 10% off their site. Now for our conclusion. Overall, the Steam Deck in 2025 is still a great console, but it's not for everyone. I think the Steam Deck is in a weird place right now. The Steam Deck has lost its most unique asset, being its software to its other competitors, and its hardware is aging quicker than the Z1 Extreme handhelds. Its competition has also gotten much more fierce with the introduction of the Legion Go S SteamOS edition, the Switch 2 coming out later this year, and Xbox's rumored upcoming ASUS handheld. It is overall becoming abundantly clear that its competitive edge over Windows handhelds is dwindling as time passes. I think the Steam Deck OLED could use a little bit of a price cut in 2025 as well, because the 1TB model being around $649 is just a little crazy. But with the tariff situation going on, who the hell knows anymore, man? In 2025, I personally would recommend getting a regular Steam Deck LCD for much cheaper, or the 512GB OLED model and using a micro SD card to expand your storage. Or even get an ROG Ally and load SteamOS onto it, which by the way, I did an updated 2025 review of that handheld, which you should watch after this video if that idea intrigues you. It's not that I don't love my Steam Deck OLED. It's just a little bit difficult now to justify its price tag. But if you are able to get one cheaper, like a used one or a refurbished one, go for it. I have been a bit harsh on the Steam Deck in today's video, but I love my Steam Deck OLED and I still use it all the time. Sometimes you just have to be a little critical of the things you love. That's going to do it for today's video. If you found this video informative, leave a like and subscribe for more handheld reviews and tech related videos. Also, you might as well hit that little bell to be the first to know when my next video comes out. This has been Killer Cam. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Peace.